everybody! A while back you saw me do a video on future me and how I would write letters to my future self every year. They would be personal, but sometimes they would include language learning aspects. I wanted to share with you guys part of the very first letter that I wrote. It was a much more positive letter than a lot of the ones that I have, but I wanted to share it with you. Now, if you are my friend on Snapchat, you've probably seen that part of it already, but I wanted to go into more detail about it because it really stuck out to me. Here I have a stack of the letters that I've written since 2011 to present day. Every year I write one, but I also reread all of them every year. Why all of them? I forget what I wrote in some of the older ones. I don't even remember what I wrote in the one that comes to me that year. But it's okay because I could see how my life has progressed, and it's really exciting to see that kind of what I accomplished that year, what my hopes and dreams were, and what happened since then. So I wanted to share part of the first letter. It was a different point in my life. It's important to know where I was at for you to understand this. Back then, I only spoke English. I was a sophomore in high school. I learned a little bit of Japanese because I was studying it on my own. I was taking Spanish, so I would have been in Spanish 3 by then. And I knew some grammar and things, but I could only speak English fluently at that point. I was not where I am today. Completely different person, had hopes of dreams of traveling and speaking other languages because those were my life goals at the time. However, as a sophomore, even though I went through this teen angst period, which you may be familiar with in your own lives, we all kind of go through that. Some people might not, but I know a lot of people like to joke about it once they're older. I definitely went through that period, but sophomore year, I don't know what happened, but I was so much more content. I was more confident in myself and who I was, and I was a much more positive and happier person. I wrote this first letter then, and the tone of it, every year that I read it, it makes me happy, it makes me laugh. It just brings joy to my life to see how optimistic I was during this letter, especially because some of the others aren't that way. So here's the part I wanted to share, specifically. Today marks exactly a year since you started taking Japanese seriously. How much have you progressed in your Japanese learning skills? No matter, I'm still proud of you because I know for a fact that you tried and didn't give up, even if you only did learn a little bit. If you came very far in learning it, congratulations and keep up the good work. Don't let people bring you down because they're jealous of what you're capable of. Even in 10th grade, people were kind of, giving me a hard time for wanting to study Japanese. I would sit there, and I know this is super nerdy, but if you love languages and you're kind of a grammar nerd, then you might find yourself conjugating verbs in another language, just instead of doodling, you're doing that during your free time during class. And for me, I, at the time, only spoke English and then just some Japanese. Now, I wrote that on April of 2011, or it was April 8th of 2011, because that's when I had found out about that website. I thought the site, the concept was super cool, and I received it on January 8th of 2012. And in that letter I said, this has been a year since you started taking Japanese very seriously. So going back to that other video I made, that's why I always receive my letters on the 8th of January. It was a significant date for me, and although I don't study Japanese anymore, it still is cool to have that tradition to do it on that day and remember what it meant. Now, I can't remember how far I got in my Japanese studies, but I did take them seriously for a while. I had a notebook, I went through lessons, I was progressing, I was able to make basic sentences. But there's something about this that just really stuck out to me, and it was the fact that I was actually nice to myself, because even though I'm older, sometimes we get older, and older doesn't always mean wiser. You can learn from your younger self, and in that moment when I read that this past year, I had to share it because I thought, wow, I was kind to myself, and I tend to be on the perfectionist side of things, so I'm not always kind to myself. Here, when I read this and it said, I'm still proud of you because I know for a fact that you tried and didn't give up, even if you only did learn a little bit. I was happy that I even gave it a go. I was happy that I learned even a little bit. I wasn't upset because I didn't reach a certain level. Now, of course, I was writing that to my future self, but the fact that my past self was okay with that means something. And it just made me think, wow, why aren't I that kind to myself anymore? We should all strive to be this kind to ourselves, not just in a letter to your future self, but in the present. You should be happy with where you are, and of course strive to continue to do more. But be happy with your progress because it means something. You sat there and you took the time to study when you could have been doing other things. You decided to go for something that you like, maybe even that you love, and you got somewhere. Now, back then, I always, lately anyway, have been telling myself, try to live your life being the inspiration that you wish your younger self had. Back in those days, there were not many polyglot videos out there. This was 2011, so I remember... Actually, I don't even know if I remember seeing Richard's stuff out there, or Luca's things, or even Tim Donor. I'm not sure if their videos were out at that point. I remember following a couple of channels in Japanese because that is what I wanted to learn so badly. At that time, I didn't even really speak Spanish. I wasn't as interested as I was in Japanese, so I was primarily following Japanese language YouTube channels. But this was before the days of all the polyglot channels, all the free resources for how to learn languages. I was kind of just discovering that there weren't as many people out there. And now, looking back, had my younger self seen, wow, she persisted and she studied these languages, and now she's able to use them, I would be so excited knowing that my future self ended up doing what she wanted to do. It's so weird to talk about myself in the third person. It feels so unnatural, but you get what I mean, right? It's so cool to see that. But it's even cooler to learn from my past self as well, because you can. You can learn from the present, you can learn from the past, you could try to make a better future that way. Because by knowing what my past self said about being kind to yourself, which is so important, I know that'll set me up for more success in the future with my language learning journey. I invite you guys to be kind to yourself. It's a topic that I've been hearing a lot lately in the Women in Language conference, just different blog posts from different language influencers out there, language learners, and we talk about that because it's an issue. We wouldn't be talking about it if it weren't an issue. But a lot of the time we tend to not be kind to ourselves, and the truth is, we can't control what other people say to us, if they're going to say some really rude comment, if they overcorrect you, but you can control what you're going to say to yourself and how you're going to react when you make a mistake. Whether you chastise yourself or whether you say, well, it's just part of the process and it's one step closer to getting better. You're stuck with yourself, even if you have different language partners throughout your life. You are also your own language partner because you set your schedule, you set what you're learning, kind of your method, and you need to be self-aware and kind or lenient with yourself. I just wanted to share that with you guys because, like I said, reading that, it just really stuck out to me, and I thought, man, I need to be kinder to myself. And I'm sure I am not the only one, especially if you're a perfectionist or, I don't know, you're an achiever, you have that achiever personality like I do where you like to cross things off a list, you like to set goals and you like to reach them and you're really motivated by that. It can be really hard to give yourself some leeway, to cut yourself some slack, whatever, being nice, even being civil with yourself sometimes. But I wanted to share that as a reminder to all of us to be more kind. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!